community for real moms and ladies who will proudly consume cannabis. Can you tell us a little bit about how you found cannabis? And even more specifically, do you remember the first time you smoked?
Yes, I do. I was 18 years old. I smoked with my best friend at the time. And that was when I guess, technically found cannabis, or more or less it found me. My friend just started smoking weed, and she was like, I started smoking weed, and, very hush hush and kind of, not supposed to be doing that sort of thing. So she's like, do you want to try? And I was like, this is my best friend. Like, if she's smoking weed and she's cool with it, then I was just like, okay, like, sure. I tried it. She helped me. She guided me through everything. The first time we smoked out of a pipe, because that's what she'd been using. I don't think she knew how to roll anything just yet. So she had this small little pipe, and she packed me a bowl and put her finger over the little hole and everything for me, because I was like, what on earth are you doing? Like, what is all of this? And so I'm super grateful for that. And I remember that now when I'm with newbies, because, it is a lot and it can be overwhelming if you've never smoked weed before, and the different ways that you can do it. It can seem like, oh, I can't ever figure this out. So it's always nice to be kind to beginners. But yeah, that was my first time smoking weed. I was 18. I did not get high. Obviously, most people don't. And she told me, she's like, you probably won't even get high. Like, let's just do it this first time. And the second time, you're definitely gonna get high. The second time I did. And it was always a great experience. So I've been smoking weed ever since.
Nice. Do you have a favorite strain?
I have multiple favorite strains, but I would always say that my top two favorites are Candyland and Lamb's Bread.
I love Lamb's Bread. Very delicious.
Very good strain.
I haven't had Candyland before. I'm more of a purple person. I love Granddaddy Purple.
That's a good one.
I grew that for a couple of years, and it grew like an octopus. It was very fat with tentacles.
Have you ever tried Purple Punch?
No, I haven't.
You might like that. It's pretty good too.
What I always wanted to try, Purple Haze. I can't find it.
I can't find that either, but I would love to try that as well.
I know, right?
I actually wanted to try, and this is kind of common, but not that common, is Blueberry Kush. I had it a long time ago, and I haven't been able to find it anywhere recently. So
sounds like a cross. It sounds like a cross between Blue Dream and some OG Kush.
Yeah, something like that. It's very fragrant, though, as you can imagine, from being blueberry. It's really delicious. Yeah.
Beautiful flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So where did you get the idea for your company? Where did Blowin Mama actually come from? Tell us a little bit about the history there and what led you to create this amazing brand.
Yeah, I mean, it started a lot out of necessity, right? I am a mom. I smoke weed. like I said, I've been smoking weed since I was 18 years old, so most of my life. And it's a big part of my life. And when I moved to LA about 4 years ago, I noticed that there's this new thing that was being trendy called these canna moms or stoner moms or moms who smoke weed. And I was like, oh, well, that's like, I guess me technically. And I kept seeing all these reports and like a lot of traction around this new trend that this parenting or motherhood trend, I guess is what it was being considered 5 years ago or 4 years ago or so. And so it's just like, okay, this is interesting. So I started to kind of look into it a little bit more. And I started seeing that all the women who were being featured and profiled were white. And I was just like, okay, well, definitely in my experience, more than just white women and white moms, I'm sure, are not the only moms who are smoking weed. Like, I smoke weed. My friends are all Black and they smoke weed. So I'm just like, this is not really jiving with what I see every day. And so I started to kind of research and look, and there were not that many well-known in the space. And I'm just like, well, this can't be right because Black people and white people smoke weed at the same rates. So that means that something is happening here where Black people either one are not getting the opportunity and features and shine that their white counterparts are, or maybe Black people and specifically Black moms just don't smoke weed. And that just didn't seem realistic because I'm a Black mom and I smoke weed. So I was just like, oh, well, maybe somebody will do it, or maybe somebody will think like, hey, something's wrong with this picture. It's lacking color. But nobody said that. And so it's just like, well, I guess I have to do it myself. Like, if I want to prove that something exists and that I exist, I should probably just put myself out there. And so I figured, what's the worst that could happen? So I put myself out there. I created Blowin Mama because I just wanted to let the world know that like Black women and Black moms, brown moms smoke weed, and it's normal, just like it is for white moms. And I wanted to kind of create that space where people could look and see me or women who look like me and feel represented, and not be like, oh, well, this cannabis industry is not really for us, when it actually is. And it's the birthright of everyone. And everyone should have access to this plant. And so the more I got into it, the more I was just like about spreading the message of, moms smoke weed, and moms who smoke weed are not bad moms, and specifically Black moms smoke weed too, and they're not bad moms, and just really putting it out there to diversify, to represent, and to show people that this is possible. This is a form of medicine. This is a form of healing. This is also a potential job opportunity for you, and if anything else, so that they know that, like I said before, like they're not alone, which is most important, I find. And that's why that's one of the reasons why I continue to do what I do. But initially I started Blowin Mama because there were no Black moms being represented. And I was like, I'm a Black mom, so I guess the lane's wide open. I'm just going to blaze right through and see what happens.
Yeah, and I appreciate bringing that representation to the table, because we know, I mean, if we look at history, it's not just white people that are in cannabis. I mean, it's everyone. But as a Black woman entering this space, you're building this community around this brand. We're for mothers. What were you met with? Were you met with acceptance? Were you met with resistance? What was that like? Literally getting Blowin Mama off the ground.
I've never faced any sort of resistance or anything. I've never faced any if anything, it's been relief when a lot of people found Blowin Mama. I still get these messages to this day where people are just like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy I found Blowin Mama. Like, I never thought like people like you existed. Like, thank you for doing this. You're doing great work. You're representing Black women. You're representing Black moms. You're representing Black people. You're representing women. I get those messages all the time. And so if anything, it's nothing but love and support that I've gotten, and people just saying like, thank you for existing, because now like I see myself, and I think it's possible. So many moms have been like, I see you, and like now I'm gonna come out. I'm gonna tell my family I smoke weed. I'm not ashamed. I'm gonna start doing this cannabis business that I was, thinking about. And so it becomes more attainable. And so no, I haven't really. I mean, the only challenges I've faced are probably the challenges that a lot of cannabis entrepreneurs face, which is marketing, which is quite difficult when you can't really do the advertising spin like other podcasts and companies can. I've faced, the algorithm, obviously, on Instagram. That's a challenge. And everything else I've been doing on my own. I guess a challenge being a Black entrepreneur is not really having mentors readily available to mentor you and like guide you. You kind of have to be your own mentor and figure things out yourself. Funding obviously is a challenge. Like Black entrepreneurs don't get capital from places or don't even know where to look. Again, that ties in with the mentorship thing as well. So that's been a challenge, me funding myself and doing everything myself. But I feel like that's part of the course of being a small business owner is like, realizing that you're gonna have to be bootstrapped. A lot of this stuff you're probably gonna have to pay for yourself, especially when you're Black, because a lot of times people don't see the value in Black things, Black people, Black ideas. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. And I would like to think I'm very resilient. I find ways around those things. And so once I do get my foot in that door, then I leave it cracked open for the next Black woman coming in behind me. I think it's really important. But I haven't faced any challenges that no other Black entrepreneur hasn't faced: money, resources, networking kind of thing, like starting from the ground level and building yourself up. So, but from the external, from the audience wise, everything, it's been nothing but love and support. And I'm so grateful.
Excellent. Yeah, and you mentioned, getting direct messages and people reaching out to you saying, hey, I appreciate this representation. Thank you for bringing us to the table. And you also mentioned that there hasn't been a lot of mentors to maybe help you on this journey. Have you been a mentor for other people, for other women trying to get into the cannabis industry that maybe look to you like, hey, you broke in, how can I get in?
You know what? Honestly, I don't even feel like I'm at the level where I can offer mentorship yet. I'm still just trying to keep my head above water. I'm like, literally, I have so many things that I have to do day to day between my business and my family. So it's a lot. I have not had the chance. I would love to. Don't get me wrong. I would absolutely love to when I'm in a place where I can actually be organized with everything and like have that as like a dedicated, however many days a week or a month I like give to someone else to mentor. Separately, in my own personal life, I have mentored like high school kids because I'm a journalist by trade. And so mentoring in that way, I always feel like each one teach one, which is something that the saying in the South is each one who has the knowledge and power in whatever you should teach one. Reach back and teach one. So I'm a very firm believer in that. Absolutely. And I can't wait to get to the space where I can do that. I will say that I am the person that always sharing resources, links, ideas. Ask me a question. I'm an open book. I'll help you if I can. I'm always that person with my group of friends who are entrepreneurs and close family. So I guess that counts as mentorship, but it's just, if anyone ever has a question, you slide into my DMs. I do get a lot of DMs and I get a chance to read it. I'm more than willing, and like I'll help you if I can.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point. You're a mother, you're an entrepreneur. What is a day like in your position? And there's so many parents out there that use cannabis, to relax and to relieve themselves from stress. What's a day like in your position? How does cannabis help?
Yeah, I mean, no 2 days are the same, right? I have like two very amazing humans who are 5 years old and 1.5, and they are, no 2 days are the same for them. Some days are good days, some days are not so good days. That's with everybody. They're entitled to that. And so with that being said, when you're dealing with two personalities and you don't know what's going to happen and what mood they're going to be in from day to day, no 2 days are the same. But I would say now that school's back in session, my daughter has her distance learning in the days, in the mornings. It's only like a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours. And then, my partner, he works. And then we have the baby who, like, I don't know what his purpose will be yet because daycares and all these things are in preschools are not open. So it's just like, he just hangs out. He's just getting the vibe. He's catching education on the side from his sister. He's learning things. He's just hanging out, he's eating food. He's watching Sesame Street. And, just doing those things. But I mean, cannabis helps tremendously with, like, as you can imagine, like kind of like the busyness in the nature of my life. Like even with my partner, sometimes I think I'm like, today, did we even really speak to each other in a meaningful way, besides like, oh, go get that diaper, can you hand me that, where's this, oh, I'm gonna take a shower, all right, I have a meeting, I'm gonna do this, and then next thing you know, the suns went down. It's like, how are you today? So it's definitely, cannabis helps that, because for us, it's like, hey, I'm about to go smoke. Like, the baby's taking a nap. Do you want to join me? And then that's the moment where we're able to unwind, unpack our day so far, connect with each other. And even if he can't join me because maybe he still has meetings or something for me, then I always try to find a time during the day. It's usually during my son's nap. Around that point, my daughter's done with her school, so she's probably watching Disney Plus. And that's a point where I go into my room, or maybe I take a shower or something, I don't know. And I'll smoke a bowl of weed from my bong and just, relax, just think, have a moment to myself to center myself. And just, so I can go back into the good fight, because then the second half of the day is dinner, bedtime, baths, and and all of that stuff, and then get through that, and then it's night again, and it's time for me to have my me time with my partner, maybe, and just relax again, consume more cannabis, watch TV, maybe catch up on shows. And I think that that's like the way that those are kind of like typical ways. But like on a day like today, I could be doing something like this, and then later I could be recording the podcast, and then I could be answering like a billion emails, answering DMs, replying to comments, liaisoning with like different people that I work with on the podcast, making sure things are coming together. So like no 2 days are the same, but I never have a day where I'm like, oh, I don't have anything to do today. Like that doesn't happen.
Right? You're a Jill of all trades. You wear many hats, and all entrepreneurs wear many hats, until we can figure out where to delegate responsibility. And some entrepreneurs have a hard time letting go. That's
me. That's me right now.
Tell us a little bit about your podcast and how it is actively working towards breaking down this stigma. I mean, when I think of Blowin Mama, when I think of the podcast, I also think, thank God, that there's something out there that, parents historically have had child protective services called on them. Families have been destroyed by their use of cannabis over a couple puffs. You've got a disgruntled neighbor or your cousin or whatever. And ex-husband, ex-boyfriends. I mean, let's talk about your podcast and how it's actively working to combat those stereotypes.
Yeah, aside from lack of diversity and representation of Black and brown people, and women too in the cannabis industry, and the way women have typically been conveyed, over sexualized, oh, we only like pretty things, pink, throw some glitter on it and women are going to like it. And now we're actually being catered to for our needs and the ways that cannabis can actually help heal us and be well, I think is really important. Also talking about social equity, including that in the conversation, decriminalization and legalization, access, equal access, fair pricing, putting money back into communities. But we're having all these conversations. These conversations are great, but we're leaving out parents. We're not talking about parents. We're not talking about the mom who just gave birth in the hospital and she's holding her newborn baby, and a social worker comes in and scares the shit out of her because her baby tested positive for THC. Now this woman who is a new mom is holding her baby and is being terrified, scared at the thought of possibly losing this new life that she just, gave birth to over a plant. That cannot continue to happen. That's unacceptable. And that's, for lack of better words, it's fucked up. And it's something that I think people do not care about, and people do not think about mothers until they actually become mothers. I firmly believe that. And that's women too. I think that a lot of times women don't even think about oh, well, I'm not a mom, or I never want to have kids or anything like that. But it's that's also, that could be your experience. If you decide to have kids, that could be you, especially if you consume cannabis. So I think that we need to really make sure we are including parents in these conversations as we talk about and push forward cannabis and mainstream and get people to understand it. We need to also get people to understand that women, specifically mothers, need this plant. It's an all natural, healthy way for them to stay well, either during pregnancy, breastfeeding, postpartum, or even if they just decide to take it day to day and they have a 5-year-old kid or something. It's something that can help them to be well and show up, because so many times I find that people are all like, oh, well, what about the baby? What about the baby? What about the kid? And it's what about the mom? Because if the mom is not okay, then nobody in that house is going to be okay, especially the child. So we have to realize that when we're talking about pregnant women and mothers, that we can't separate the mother from the baby, right? They're one. For 9 months, they were one person, pretty much. I mean, they weren't one person, but one was living inside of the other. So you literally cannot separate those two things. And oftentimes I feel like society wants to disregard women and toss our ailments, the things that hurt us, the things that we need to take care of ourselves, the things that are choices that we should have the right to make. But they want us to have these babies, give birth to these babies, but nobody wants to take care of us and really figure out the best ways to make pregnancy enjoyable for all women. And I think that it's possible. I think that you can enjoy the process, that you can be pregnant and at least appreciate it if you're not even enjoying it. And cannabis can help you get to that space. So I get women all the time who are like, thank you for this, because you are normalizing it. And that's the point of the podcast, is to have these conversations. And I'm always listening to my audience and the things that they want to know about. People send me messages asking for personal advice, but sometimes I see repeated questions and I'm just like, okay, this is something that obviously a lot of women are wondering about. This is a topic I need to figure out how to cover on the podcast. And I want it to be a resource. I want it to be something where somebody can be like, oh, this person doesn't support me consuming cannabis. They don't understand it. I want to say, well, listen to episode 71 of the Blowin Mama podcast, and hopefully that brings some clarity, at least help facilitate some productive conversations so that we can really start to see cannabis for the healing plant that it really is, because I think it's gotten a really bad rap. And a lot of women are afraid, especially moms are afraid to medicate with cannabis because they are afraid of losing their kids. And it's like, more often than not, a lot of women's hesitations and moms' hesitations about cannabis are not about the things that could possibly happen to their baby, but it's about the legal ramifications, right? And they're scared of losing their kids. And we just got to take that out of it. Like, there's no reason why in 2020, a mom should be getting Child Protective Services called on her over weed, over responsibly consuming a plant. You come to their home, they have the crib, they have the stroller, there's food, bottles, all these things, and you're here because of weed. Like, I think that's a waste of resources, honestly. But also it puts unfair trauma on the parents. A lot of these moms who've had Child Protective Services in their homes end up experiencing PTSD, postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression. Otherwise, healthy mom, maybe she would have still experienced these things, maybe not, but I'm pretty sure having someone scare you and thinking that you could lose your child will cause anyone PTSD, especially when you just had a baby and your body is going through a billion changes. You have hormones everywhere, and you're still questioning if you maybe fit, cut out for motherhood anyways. And then you have someone saying, actually, you're not, because you smoke weed. Like, that's horrible. So I don't want women to. I want that to go away. I don't know how we can make it go away, but when we're talking about legalizing cannabis, we need to be talking about making sure that in every way that it harms people, that rules and laws harm people who decide to medicate with that plant, we need to eradicate or adjust them ASAP, because it's just not right.
Yeah. We need to fix it. And you mentioned social equity applicants. There are plenty of mothers in jail, mothers that have been arrested, that have cannabis on their record. Maybe your podcast has actually covered this, but what do you have to say about mothers that are coming out of the prison industrial complex and, they're looking to get into any industry? I almost feel like cannabis is one of the only industries that you really can have a record and try to break into. But if you're faced with all this hurdles along the way, maybe you're a mother, maybe, you want to consume cannabis, but you can't because you're scared that your children are going to be taken away. What are your thoughts on really rectifying the victims to the war on drugs, and how someone can feel comfortable entering the industry if they're a mother, if they, maybe have a prior record? I mean, is there any advice, or do you have any thoughts on how someone can enter comfortably if they're coming from a background that involves, law enforcement, unfortunately?
Yeah. So, two things. So the first part of your question, I don't have the answers for it. I have recommendations and suggestions on ways to go about rectifying it. But at the end of the day, it's going to take a collective effort really to bring about the change necessary. And that collective effort can't just be women. It can't just be Black people. It can't just be, Asian people. It has to be all people coming together. It sounds like so, but it has to be everyone. It sounds super kumbaya, but everybody has to really come together, and we have to be like, this is the agenda, this is the plan, and we have to, by any means necessary, make sure that these things are included in any legislation going forward, especially federal legislation concerning cannabis. The main points are obviously make sure, these states are charging a cannabis tax that consumers pay when they do make a legal cannabis purchase in a dispensary. And a lot of these cities and states, that budget, the money that comes from the money that you guys are spending on your taxes, that money is going into police forces in your community. That money is going into a lot of places where you're probably not seeing it. So I think the first step is taking that money and putting it into the communities that need it the most, right? Putting it into funds that would help these people who are in these groups that don't have access to resources, have those resources, setting up more grants, making it a lot more easier for people to get into the industry so that it's not all about capital, right? I mean, let it be about capital, but let the capital swing both ways. Don't just let one group hold the bag and decide who they can distribute it to, but making sure that their friends at the cops have nice big fat wallets and are happy. Like, that just makes no sense to me. So I think that do the work, you guys, do your research in your city and your state and figure out where's the money going, and then figure out, and then vote. And then vote out those motherfuckers who are putting money to the police. And sorry for my language, but definitely, we have to really demand the change that we want to see. And being silent is not gonna help. And I know people feel like politicians, you can't trust them and all of those things, but you know what, you have to vote for the person that you think you can persuade the most, and the person who will listen to you. We're seeing in Kentucky with the AG, the attorney general there in Louisville, and this person, this Black man, got voted for by Breonna Taylor's mom. She voted for him because he's Black, and look what he's doing. He's not even helping. So I'm saying, just be educated with your vote. Figure out what's happening in your city and in your state and in your communities, and that's the way we can all kind of enact change in that way, especially even with cannabis. If you realize that your state is about to try to legalize cannabis, look into that proposition and see what's the fine print on it, because there's always fine print. And the best part about these things is that it's all available on the internet. You can look it all up. There's no prop or piece of legislation that will pass that you can't see for yourself online. So I would encourage everyone to just do your Googling and educate yourself. And as far as people who are trying to enter the industry, and maybe you're a mom, maybe you live in maybe you're a mom who lives in an illegal state, or maybe you have a record, I would say that you should network. First thing first, network. Try to meet people who are already working and doing what you want to do, or people who are just in the cannabis industry who can give you advice. I think that your network will definitely be your net worth. It will help you tremendously with learning
and what you don't need to do in order to definitely, I don't know, I wouldn't say be successful, but to at least, be able to get be successful, but to get to the place where you need to be. As far as moms, I mean, I can't tell anyone who's a mom to put yourself out there that you consume cannabis, because the ramifications could be too much for some people, and I don't want to be responsible for telling somebody you should do it and they lose their kids. I'm not gonna be that person. But I would say, if you live in a state where cannabis is recreationally legal, I think that you have a little bit more of a stronger footing to be a little bit more open and be in this industry and work, because of the fact. But with that being said, I know moms who are in the cannabis industry and live in states that cannabis is not recreationally legal, it's barely medicinally legal, and they still do it. And there are things that you can do. This one mom, she sells glass tips for joints and blunts, and she lives in the South, and that's her thing, and she's a mom. So I would get creative, but also realize, is this the industry for you? is the risk going to be worth the reward? It's not easy. You know, you got to have some gut soul, and you got to be really willing to get down and dirty. I feel like with a lot of these industries too, but I can't tell any, I don't want to tell any mom to do, to do something that could endanger her livelihood. But you know better, like what, you know best, like what you want. And if you can find the support and the community to help you get to where you need to be, then by all means, in this day and age, joining many of these Facebook groups around cannabis and entrepreneurs in cannabis and women in cannabis, it helps a lot. But I would say start networking, figure out who's who in your city or community or state, and network with those people. And if there is nobody, then maybe you should start creating some little groups with like some people that you know, and that could be the beginning. But you know, the first thing to do is just put yourself out there.
Absolutely, I agree. And when we look at the history of cannabis socially, it's always been, who do you know? I know this guy, I know this woman, you know, and it's about having those connections and really utilizing them to your full advantage. So if Blowin Mama could name 3 things in a perfect world that, you know, would help amplify your message, what would those top 3 things be?
I'm sorry, hold on one second. I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
Yeah, no worries. I did a little rant, but I'll just recap. So let's say it's a perfect world, and we're going to amplify Blowin Mama's message. You know, we are really going forward in helping to normalize parents, mothers that consume cannabis. What are 3 things in a perfect world that Blowin Mama could have that would help amplify your message across, you know, not just the United States, but overseas? What would that be in a box?
Yeah, and you know what, that you would mention the overseas bit is so funny, because I recently did an Instagram live with a young guy who's in India, and he wanted to know more about cannabis and motherhood, and I did it, and there was a good amount of people watching. I was just like, wow, so there's interest, you know, internationally as well. I get moms who write into me from Spain, from Australia, from Brazil, from Mexico, and like these are women, Canada, a lot of Canadians, and these are women who are struck and like taken by this Blowin Mama message, and they relate. And especially in a country like Australia where cannabis is highly illegal, you know, these women are really feeling like, wow, like thank you, because they're not seeing it in those countries. And so it's like, if we can normalize it here, it sets kind of a stage for it to kind of ripple effect and happen in other countries, because moms are everywhere, right? So the 3 ways to help amplify the Blowin Mama message: get the podcast in the ears of more people. So expanding the podcast. You know, I'm working. It's a weekly podcast, which means it's a lot of work weekly on me. And new episodes come out on Thursdays. But it's getting, you know, I mean, the thing, I feel like the podcast it's grown significantly and it has a lot of listeners. But I feel like it could reach a wider audience if I were able to market it the way I would like to market it. If I could take out ads, but I guess maybe I could do billboards and stuff, like in-person old school marketing, you know. But I want to reach more people outside of just like my circles and the cannabis circles. I want to reach mainstream moms who may have these questions or wonder about it, but like, you know, Scary Mommy's not really going to talk about that, or, you know, those other websites, What to Expect, and all those mommy websites that I checked out a lot with my first pregnancy. They had no information about cannabis and pregnancy, or you have to go through these forums of like 500 comments and try to figure out, you know, who's talking about what. So expand the reach of the podcast. In the perfect world, I want to reach more mainstream moms so that I can get this message out to them. A second way to expand would be to expand the merch, right? So me take more ownership of that, which I'm currently in the process of trying to figure out. And you know, that those shirts say the message that Blowin Mama is all about. Moms who smoke weed are not bad moms. First I smoke weed, then I do things. Though more people wearing those shirts means more people are going to get with the program of Blowin Mama and know that it's a thing and that it's something you should look into and know more about and start talking about and supporting. Even if you're not a mom, I always tell people, get one of the shirts, because like you wear this shirt out, you spread the message even without saying a word. So that's a second way, getting, expanding and scaling the the merchandise. And then the third way, I guess just more features, more people genuinely wanting to talk to a Black mom about cannabis and include Black moms in these conversations. And I'm happy to be that Black mom, but if there's other Black moms, that's great too. But I think that just me doing more speaking, being more featured in different publications or events or panels or conferences or things like that, that can help improve the visibility of Blowin Mama, but also just help people to know that like it's a resource that's out there. I think that when it comes down to like growing Blowin Mama, it's really just going to be about reach. Like, how wide will this reach go? How wide can I expand this net to try to capture as many moms as possible? Because I'm telling you, every single time a new mom or woman finds my page, they send me a DM like, thank you. I'm so glad I found this. My friend told me about it. My hairstylist told me about it. Like, I'm so happy I found you. I found you on the Explore page of Instagram. I'm listening to your podcast now, binging all 70 episodes. Like, it's that serious, but it's just like, how do you find me?
Right. And I think that there is such a great need for this community, this connection, this education, especially with women overseas, because like you said, there are moms overseas, there's cannabis overseas. I mean, we look at like the Hindu mountains and the Afghan Kush mountains, cannabis didn't start in the United States. Seeds were grown, it was grown. I mean, Spain has a huge, cannabis consumption population, Portugal, Australia, of course, I've heard a lot of medical information come out from down under. And so I think that, in today's digital age, especially nowadays when people are cooped up or inside, cannabis sales are up 65%. So, we're all looking for just information, knowledge, mental stimulation. And I agree. I think that there is a large need out there. And, in cannabis, I feel like there are a lot of stories that resonate close to home, and a lot of entrepreneurs. It's, slow and steady wins the race. No one is the hare. We're all the tortoise, and we're making our way. And so
yes.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your message. I appreciate everything that you're doing. I want to ask one final question. What are your thoughts on where cannabis is headed? Where do you see Blowin Mama in 5 years? Where do you see the cannabis industry in 5 years? Because it's very volatile. It's up and down, and it's not stable because we're still growing. We're still creating history. And so where do you think the industry is heading in the next 5 years? Where do you want it to go?
I mean, in the next 5 years, let's really hope and pray that cannabis is federally legal, first of all, right? Like, let's hope that it's removed off the list as a Schedule 1 drug and it's not considered Schedule anything, like it's just taken off. So that once that happens, once legalization occurs and it's no longer considered a Schedule 1 drug. I don't want it to be a Schedule 2 drug. I don't want it to be I don't want it to be considered a drug, and I want those studies to commence. Once that happens, the studies can commence, and then people who are seeking studies for confirmation on using it for XYZ reason can get that confirmation, or at least get a start of some sort of confirmation on information about this plant. But I think legalization needs to happen. I think I'm really hoping that some sort of mass education happens about this plant, because we need to really rewrite the narrative. Not even change the narrative. We need to rewrite the narrative about this plant, because I think that so many people have been misinformed about what cannabis can do, what it doesn't do, and what it looks like, what it smells like, what it feels like. When people don't know these things, people fall prey to bad actors who are selling them things that can harm them and then ultimately ruin the reputation of the good people, the good guys who are selling these products that are really, who've been doing it for 20, 30 years, whatever, 15 years, 10 years, and they know the integrity of the plant. And so these are the people who need to be pushed to the forefront so that they can help to educate these audiences. I think that's like one part of it, obviously legalization. But for Blowin Mama itself, I would love to see Blowin Mama as like one of those, as one of the mom, cannabis entrepreneurs or canna moms, one of the canna moms who isn't afraid to talk about cannabis, who you've probably seen on the news talking about cannabis. I want to expand Blowin Mama so it's in the consciousness, so that it's something that people are talking about. And Blowin Mama is not just me. I don't think it's me. I think it's all moms who need some sort of representation and who need I just want moms to have more of a voice in this industry, and I think that can happen in 5 years. There are a lot of other mom entrepreneurs in cannabis who consume and who are doing really big things, and there are more moms every day who are waking up like, hey, maybe I should just start a business in cannabis, and I think that's great. So I want to see more of that. I want to see more women. I want to see more Black people. I want to see more moms in the cannabis industry. I want to see Blowin Mama on TV. I want to see Blowin Mama books, obviously. I want to sell Blowin Mama hemp. I want to do whatever you can throw Blowin Mama on and it's related to weed and it jives well with my life, then that's something I want to kind of stand behind, because I think that cannabis has helped my life in so many ways, and I feel like it can help so many people. You don't even have to smoke it. And I think that that's the thing that we're running up against, even with Blowin Mama, is always having to educate. So hopefully in 5 years that education will be a lot more advanced than it is now. I feel like even where we are today is a lot further than we were 5 years ago. People are learning so much and are open to learning. So in 5 years from now, people may know so much more, but also I feel like the endocannabinoid system is going to be in the zeitgeist a lot more. People are going to be talking about cannabinoids a lot more in the next 5 years. We're going to have a lot more understanding about it, and it's going to be something that hopefully will be taught to these kids, to these doctors, so that this is part of the culture going forward, and we're if anything, just finding better ways to integrate it into our lives instead of demonizing it and saying, no, don't try that because I'm not sure. It's, hey, let's try that. Tell me how it worked for you. Let's document that and figure out a better way to do it if it didn't work or it did work, and how it can work for me. I think that those are the conversations, empowering more people to grow. I want to see that in 5 years. I want to just go to people's houses and see them with their cannabis plant. I want that to be common. I think that just empowering people to take care of themselves and their health, and cannabis is a great driver to get people in that seat and start taking control of their lives and their future and their health. So that's what I'm hoping in 5 years. Who knows what will actually happen, especially in this country, in 5 years. But that's my hope, because in 5 years, my kids will be 10 and 6. My goodness, I want some progress to happen for them. I want to be able to look back and be like, you grew up and guess what happened? Weed became legal, and I want them to laugh at the fact that I had to hide smoking joints when I was a teenager, and now it's go to the convenience store, you can go pick up some hemp rolls or something, I want it to be more commonplace, and that's my hope, but I don't know if that'll happen.
My parents never thought that cannabis would be recreational in their entire lifetime. They're mid-60s now, so anything, we're optimistic. Anything is possible, and kind of going to what you said about performing more research studies. One trending article we had on Emerald was about cannabis and breast milk. That was one of the most higher clicked on articles that we had. So we know that there are plenty of people out there that they're craving this education.
Craving it, yes.
Craving it. They want it, and they're interested. And I think even people that have never had children are curious.
They want to know. Yeah.
So
people want to know. They want answers. I get this question at least 5 times a day, asking me, where can I find research? Where can I find studies? I want resources. I want answers about cannabis and breastfeeding, cannabis and pregnancy, cannabis and postpartum, cannabis and trying to have a baby. These are questions that moms and dads are having, and they want to know, and even separately, if you're not a mom, people want to know, how can cannabis help me with my vaginal health? Can it help me with my sex life? Can it help me with, these are different things that, like, you can't go to your doctor and really get the answers for, but cannabis can provide those answers. Imagine, how game-changing that could be if, like, a plant has the answers to so many issues that people have with their bodies and their health and their wellness. And people want the answers. And I often tell people, I'm like, look, it's going to be a while before we get there. And if you're willing to wait 5, 6, 7, 10 years, then great. I don't recommend you waiting on the studies to be present. I recommend you talk to the people. I recommend you do the work yourself by trying different products and seeing what works for you. I recommend you, talk to people who are experts in cannabis, and then make an informed decision about whether cannabis is best for you. But, like, if we're all going to be waiting on these studies, we're going to be waiting a long time, and I don't have time to wait. Like,
time to wait.
Yeah. I want to have kids today, like, I'm not going to wait to figure out, so I think that it's definitely, there's room for everything, but I think that we have to give ourselves permission to trust ourselves more. And that's really what it all comes down to, and trust other people. Like I said, I've spoken to hundreds of moms who've all said they've smoked weed while they were pregnant or consumed cannabis in some form. Their babies are fine. Their babies are grown. Their babies have had babies, and everybody's fine. And so it's like, I think I'm going to trust the word of these 100-something women, because why would they lie to me? Like, why would they have no reason. What do they have to gain from lying about it? I want people to start talking about smoking. I want moms to talk about smoking weed more, even if it's just in their circles, because just by talking about it, you remove the stigma, you normalize it, you take the power away from the, oh, you're a bad mom. Like, no, like, I'm doing this, and then I'm going to go cook breakfast for my kids, So I think that we have to talk about it to normalize it, to remove the stigma. It's just like talking about going to therapy, right? Like, talk about going to therapy more so you can normalize it. These are these things that need to be normalized, because once we do that, then it's just like, oh, yeah, like having a cup of tea with cannabis in it is like having a cup of coffee in the morning, like, it's a part of my day.
You just got to keep the conversations going and start the conversations when they're not there. And I think a lot of women are looking forward to the day they can have those conversations with their doctors and not worry about being judged, or, are they going to keep tabs on me? And then when my baby, what we talked about earlier. And I think we still do have a little bit of ways to go, but I think that, people like yourself, and brands like Blowin Mama, you're getting that conversation off the ground. You're getting it going. You're helping to break down those stigmas and those walls, and you're making women feel comfortable. I think really for the first time, a lot of women that come across Blowin Mama must feel the sense of relief, not even just from the cannabis, but from the fact that they're able to have this comfortable conversation with other women like themselves that they didn't have anywhere else to go to, and so I know I said it before, but I appreciate that. I appreciate my mother. She had some paranoia with cannabis, but she's slowly come into it, over the last maybe 10 years. And so, but before, she was very scared. She didn't even want to have it in the house. Then obviously I started doing this cannabis media group, and she's like, all right, maybe there's something to this. I'll give it a try. And so, yeah, thank you so much. For people that want to download the podcast, or they want to find you online, where can they go?
Yeah, so the podcast is available on all podcast platforms. So Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts. It's available in all of those areas. And new episodes come out every Thursday. You can also binge it. You can go on my website, blowinmama.com/podcast, and you can listen to the podcast there, read the show notes and the descriptions and anything. And I think that if you want to follow me on Instagram, follow Blowin Mama on Instagram at Blunt Blowin Mama. If you want to get one of those t-shirts that I was bringing up, the Blunt Blowin Mama merch, then you can follow at BBM Clothing Line. And if you want to follow me, just like the person, you can follow me on Instagram at Shanitra. This is all Instagram. Instagram at Blunt Blowin Mama. Instagram at BBM Clothing Line, Instagram at Shanitria. These are all different ways that you can follow me. Blunt Blowin Mama is also on Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to send me an email, because I do take emails, I get a lot of direct messages that I hinted at before, and so it's hard for me to reply to all of those. I do get a lot of emails, but not as many, so I do recommend you emailing me if you have a question or you want to say something. You can just email me at bluntblowinmama@gmail.com. And I'm not, like, I don't care. I'll give anyone my email because I would rather you email me than send me a direct message, because it's so hard to keep track of messages on Instagram. And I get so many. I would really, I love to hear from people, and I'm always like, just send me an email and I'll get back to you. I want to chat with you, hear your story, give you some sisterhood and some loving and some kind words of encouragement, because sometimes that's all people need. It's just like another mom who gets it, another woman who gets it, to be like, you're all right. Like, it's okay. You're fine. You're supported. You're not alone. If that's all I need to say in my response to you, my job is done. You know, and that's usually sometimes all I do say. Sometimes I'll be like, you know, you're taking care of yourself. It sounds like you're being responsible. You're not alone. This community is full of 19,000 other women or people who do consume, who support you. And like, this is like, you're not alone. Like, that's all. At the end of the day, like, follow Blunt Blowin Mama on all those platforms. Go to bluntblowinmama.com. But, you know, just know that, like, when you get there, there's a community of men and women who support you and your journey with cannabis. You don't have to smoke weed and you don't have to be a mom, but you do need to support cannabis to get with the Blunt Blowin Mama groove, to get down with the squad.